So my book is called Dopamine Detox, the ultimate guide to reset your brain. And the dopamine detox term was created by a psychologist at the UC San Francisco. And his name was Dr. Seppa Cameron. And he actually created the term dopamine detox. And he found through his research that if we were to take a step back in this overstimulating society, we can actually see some great effects on the brain. And like you were saying, Tommy, how you were saying that you would use your phone for like 10 hours a day. If people's baseline dopamine are at playing video games a day, they're going to find it hard to read a book. Like you were saying, how you were able to just read more when you were taking a break from some of those things.
Welcome to the Global Affair podcast, brought to you by Love Out Loud, the world's largest love-based movement actualizing a civilization of love by 2030. My name's Nicole Gibson, and join me and some of the world's brightest minds as we bring some of the most important and controversial conversations of our time into a space of unity. It's important to know that as your host, this isn't about my personal opinion or bias, but rather an opportunity to listen with love, honesty, curiosity, and reveal the true universal experience us humans have amongst the differences. So if you love the show, please let us know by giving us a rating and tell us how to make this conversation easier for other people to jump into as well. And with that, let's get it. Welcome to the Global Affair in Los Angeles. We're here with Sanaz again, who you would know from the previous two episodes that she kindly hosted at her house in Laguna. We're still riding the vibe of the past couple of days where we've been doing the recording for those episodes. Welcome, Sanaz, back to the Global Affair.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here again. And, we've been doing these back to back, and it just feels like the momentum for it is really growing, at least within me. And my excitement for Love Out Loud is just bursting with excitement.
It's loud. That's the plan. And then we've also got our two special guests here who I'm really excited to actually share with our audience. We've got Tommy and Blake, both incredibly young entrepreneurs, especially you, Blake, 17 years old. I think potentially the youngest entrepreneur I've ever interviewed, which is pretty epic. But I'd love to just open it up and hear some of your stories before we really tie in some of the through lines that we're going to explore today, which is all about digital wellness. Maybe starting with you, Tommy.
Sure. Yeah, honored to be included as a young entrepreneur. My name is Tommy Sobel, and as you guys know, I'm a digital habits coach. And
the first ever, right?
I'm the first person ever. When I did a Google search, there was not a single person that called themselves that.
Making history.
Until me. So yeah, according to Google, I've spent about the past 6 years or so curating and developing a community called Brick, which is basically based off of a daily challenge, which is, can you turn your phone into a brick? Can you turn your phone off and do something that you love in the real world? And that's something that started with my own personal journey coming from the film industry. I used to work for a big film director, and I was actually given a role as the new media executive. And so I had to figure out for this big film studio what we're going to do on Instagram and TikTok and Snapchat. And so I wanted to do well, and I was a hyperachiever. And so the next thing I know, I was checking my phone first thing in the morning and last thing at night, and waking up in the middle of the night to check my phone for no real reason. And basically, if anybody was addicted to their phone, it became me. And I started to have some serious mental health effects. I was feeling anxious and irritable, and like no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't keep up, and I couldn't say no to these urges to check my phone in social situations or again, like in the middle of the night. And so that was my problem, and I thought it was my own secret problem. I thought I was the only one that was dealing with it, and I had a lot of shame around it, and nobody was talking about it. This was back in 2015, and so I basically, thank God I also had a background in neuroscience. I used to do neuroscience research before the film industry. And so I just started applying some really rudimentary habit change practices on myself. And I'd actually started working. And the first one was, okay, can I put my phone down just for an hour a day to do my favorite thing again that I hadn't been doing, which was to read. So I was like finally reading during my brick hour, I called it. And over the course of that year, I ended up reading 27 books. And I was like, oh my God, like that's amazing. And, loved everything I learned. But more importantly, it was, as we've talked about in the past, like the sense of control or agency that I got from carving that hour away from screens, from just giving myself that permission to do that. And so that's how Brick started. That was my Brick hour. And I really just kind of challenged a bunch of other people in the film industry to do that too. And they've like really resonated with it. I realized they were seeking that permission to get off the grid as well, because they were feeling obligated to be always on and keep up for the kind of digital rat race and to make their, businesses grow. So yeah, so that's how it started. And then over the years, I went from being on my phone for like 10 hours a day down to an average of now like 1 or 2 hours a day. And people started asking me how I did that, how I got control. And so that's how I became the first digital habits coach and started helping others solve the same problems that I had of both making a great living and having a great life. And yeah, it's going really well.
What do you average on your screen time now?
It's like 1 or 2 hours. Yeah, 2 hours.
Seriously?
Yeah.
That's great from 10 hours.
Yeah, from 10
my
hours.
reminders
To
off.
1 to 2 hours.
Yeah.
There's a couple of things in there, Tommy, before we jump over to you, Blake. You said you had shame. I find that really interesting. You're working a job where clearly, the expectation was that you were that accessible all the time.
Yeah.
How did that start to sort of come into your awareness that you were actually experiencing shame? Like, where did, if you don't mind sharing, the behavior kind of lead you to a point where you started to feel shame around that?
That's a great question. I think, I always had it, whether I was aware of it. That's something I might need to think about. But, there was a moment when I crashed into a car in front of me that was at a red light. And the reason why I crashed into it is because I was on my phone and I just like didn't see that it was, stopped in front of me. And so that, I think, rock bottom or that wake up call of being like, okay, like this is a serious issue, was when I think I probably saw that the shame was keeping me from doing anything about it until then. It was kind of only after the fact I realized that, hey, why am I not talking to my therapist about this? Or why am I kind of trying to deal with this alone? Or why am I not dealing with this? And so it was only kind of in hindsight that I realized that the not talking about it, the shame, the thinking that it was just me was there.
Was it a sense of compulsion that you couldn't control? Is that basically
exactly? Yeah, I kind of boil it down. Now I have, some frameworks on all this, and I call it the phone smart method, actually, because our phones are designed to be smarter than us. And so we have to kind of do these 3 things to become smarter than our phones. And so that's why I call it the phone smart. But the first pillar.
Dyslexic.
What?
You're not just dyslexic.
Right, exactly. The smartphone, the phone's smart for smartphones. That's kind of the tongue twister. Great for dyslexic people, perhaps, actually.
Right.
So the first pillar is to master your urges. Because I think when you boil it all down, so much of our challenges with screens is this uncontrollable urge to check it even when we don't want to. The damage to relationships, whether it's intimate relationships or relationships at work, I feel like we're sacrificing true connection for that kind of false connection, in screens. And that's also, I think, a hidden cost for most young people.
And creating a false reality, like your online presence could also affect that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So let's definitely get deeper into this. But Blake, how does a 15, 16-year-old, how old were you when you wrote your book?
So when I wrote my book, I was 15 years old.
Unbelievable.
During writing the book, as the young entrepreneur
This
that
is
you call
before
me.
ChatGPT.
Before ChatGPT.
ChatGPT did not write this book.
Yeah.
Yes. So my book is called Dopamine Detox, the ultimate guide to reset your brain. And the dopamine detox term was created by a psychologist at the UC San Francisco. And his name was Dr. Seppa Cameron. And he actually created the term dopamine detox. And he found through his research that if we were to take a step back in this overstimulating society, we can actually see some great effects on the brain. And like you were saying, Tommy, how you were saying that you would use your phone for like 10 hours a day. If people's baseline dopamine are at playing video games a day, they're going to find it hard to read a book. Like you were saying, how you were able to just read more when you were taking a break from some of those things. So I talk about digital tech habits in my book and creating a new pathway into better tech habits. And the book just kind of also talks about my experience with my youth generation and how I was struggling with my internet addiction. Things like social media were just keeping my attention all day. It would even affect my relationships. In school, it was like back then people would have just deep, meaningful connections. And now it's kind of, you're going out into social settings and everyone's kind of just on their phone. Oh, hey, check out this video. And it's just different than it was back then.
I commend you on that because, I have a 16-year-old brother. You met Shia, and
Yes.
Shia went through. He's 17 now. He won't like me saying he's 16. It's important.
My older brother always did that.
Yeah, like it's important. I'm 17. But he went through his digital addiction when he was 15. And, it was tough. It was the toughest 6 months. He's, in like the recovery aspect of it, because he at some point was like, well, we weren't educated or like taught by our parents or, NVIDIA, this is a new emerging technology. We weren't taught how to have a healthy relationship with it. And it's so easy to just like be so consumed by it, to build these alternate realities online with your personas and, whether it's games or, just the influencer characters that you create online. Like some of it is not really resonant with what's happening in your reality. You can just create an entire alternate version of yourself online, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And it's really affecting us too, because I've been doing research. It's like we have a 300% increase in depression and anxiety amongst teenagers due to social media. We have so
It's
many
directly correlated to social media.
Yeah, directly correlated to social media usage. Yeah, and how it affects our social interactions, how it affects the way we perceive people, how it affects even our ego. Yeah. So the way we're going to be able to navigate social media, it kind of starts with the youth so we can have a
Totally.
better future.
Yeah.
I really want to explore in just a bit the kind of, I'd love all of us to kind of share our kind of coming of age into technology and what that was like, and see if there's a sort of a distinction between the varying age groups. Because I know sometimes you reference Blake's generation as the generation that basically can't remember a time before
Digital natives.
social media. And, although, I had my first smartphone, I think first year of university, I was 18. So there was a pretty considerable amount of time, but we had MySpace.
Did you have a pager?
What's that?
Did you have a pager?
I didn't have a pager. Did you fucking have a pager?
Yeah, I had one.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
I want a pager now. I'm trying to find a good pager. If you guys have any recommendations.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, let's get to that. But before we explore that rabbit hole, I want to understand how you guys kind of journeyed the actual detox of recognizing you had an addiction. The first time I really became aware of the severity of this was actually a friend of mine who has a son. I think he's 17 now. He was addicted to Snapchat, and she started to realize that he wasn't sleeping as a result of this. He was up all night, and she was sharing the story with me about getting him off the device, and she likened it to witnessing like a heroin addict get off heroin, and that he was just like shaking uncontrollably, totally anxious, like pale, like he really had to build back his chemical levels in the brain. And it was kind of at that point that I was like, whoa, this is like, we all know that we use our phones too much, but that's a really new level of addiction. That's pretty much as severe as addiction gets, having that kind of, that come down, and coming off the addiction to the dopamine that you're getting from your screen. And also, like, since then, I've done a lot of research and reading into this, and there's even more subtle things like the social status that people are experiencing through popularity online is kind of replacing what otherwise would have been the serotonin that we got through genuinely having to trust our family and the tribe, because they stayed awake all night and did something heroic to make sure we could sleep.
Yeah.
That kind of fundamental chemical hormonal design in us is being replicated by like, hey, look at me, I'm so great. And it's almost being kind of, manipulated in us to something that's removing us from what's most innately natural, which is to trust each other. But yeah, I would love to hear your journeys in kind of that powerful decision. You obviously, I'm sure, kind of writing the book for you, it was a catalyst to really commit to a different way of life. Talk us through the actual process of the detox that you had to go through.
Well, I think what you're What's coming to mind for the first time in a really long time of when I first knew I had like a issue with social media was actually when I was a DJ and a promoter in Hollywood. Maybe it was like 2009. So like the iPhone had just come out and I was using Facebook to promote my events, and I would just send the same message to like hundreds of people, and I got all these warnings from Facebook thinking that I was a spammer, but really I was just like texting my friends the same message a lot. I ended up getting literally kicked off Facebook, where they were like, your Facebook profile is deleted. Like they gave me enough warnings, and then it was just like,
You got ostracized?
I got like
In the early
Facebook.
days,
Yeah, this is
before
early
cancel culture was even a
Facebook.
thing.
Facebook canceled me. And I haven't thought about this in so long, but I remember being so distraught. Like, and talking to my therapist at the time, where like he was in his like 60s or 70s, and like he had never experienced somebody of my generation,
How affected you were.
how affected I was. Like it blew his mind of what our role of social media was even back then, that like my inability to use Facebook was like taking off a limb of, it was like my life, kind of losing a big part of my life. And so that obviously wasn't when I started to detox, which was your question, but it made me think of that. It made me think of that because that, these hooks have been put in us for such a long time. It's not really a smartphone thing. Yeah, it goes super deep. So,
Question for you, Tommy. I mean, so I would say kind of these tendencies of intensity maybe are kind of just a part of your innate personality, and that's been amplified by technology? Or would you say that outside of tech, you're not so prone to getting so intense about things?
I think that, well, maybe one way I could answer that is that I really care about connection. That's maybe like one way to talk about it. I also like being connected to many different people, as like you guys have experienced, when you came to my birthday. And that's like I have some deep values around like inclusion and wanting to have a large network. It's just something that's always been really important to me. And so I think social media has played a really important role for me to accomplish that, and also creating systems to accomplish that. So like, for example, with the Facebook thing of just like sending the same text to hundreds of people so that I'll bring them together, was not, I guess, how that platform was used, but it was kind of the only thing out there. Now I would use, Partiful.
They didn't want you hurting anybody.
Yeah.
To be the hurters.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. So I think I could boil it down to my like values. I feel like connection and community is so important to me that there is an intensity there. It's like, I need that. And technology has been probably not the best way, definitely not the best way, but a method of me to try to achieve that.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then when you made the decision to actually detox, how was that process?
It really just was a decision. I think everything starts with a decision. And when I just decided that I was going to break my bad phone habits, it was that 1 hour a day. And that's really how it started. And then I started just journaling about my experiences with that, like things I was noticing in my body, things I was noticing coming up in my mind. And that was kind of like a 21-day weaning self-reflection thing, because at that point, mindfulness. Yeah. At that point, I already wanted to solve this problem for myself so I could help others with it. It kind of happened all at once. I was like, holy cow, nobody is talking about this. Nobody is solving this problem. Everybody feels the same way I do. Like, I want to solve this for myself and like help others.
I actually think it'd be helpful to define what the problem is. Maybe you can like share with us what the attention economy is. Why is this even a problem in the first place? And like, why is our attention being harvested in such an exploitive way?
Yeah, though the whole social media world is just curated to abuse our dopamine reward system. Like everything from the red notification, they have split tested every single color of red to make attack our dopamine. And like red is the color of fear, the color of like danger, urgency. Yeah, that color has been split tested, so they really know what they're doing. And even Facebook's vice president of user growth even said he's guilty of what he's done to manipulate people's dopamine reward system, and it just creates a dysfunctional society.
Feeling guilty all the way to the bank.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know about Mark Zuckerberg, but some of these employees at Facebook have actually come out and said
It's
that.
been full whistleblowers.
Whistleblowers, have just been coming out and saying
Tristan
that.
Harris's work.
Yeah. Well, of course, you know, we're sort of weaponizing neuroscience, right? The more advancements that we have in neuroscience, the more some of that is used in creating addictive technology. The technology itself is agnostic. It's just the way that the current economic model is set up to be exploitive.
Yeah.
I also think about it just in terms of wellness in general. Like if you were to think about what I like to call the first pillar of wellness, which is physical wellness. If you were to look at maybe like 60 years ago, nobody strapped on running shoes and like went out for a run on the street. Like if you saw somebody running on the street 60 years ago, you'd be like, what is he running away from? Like people had less convenient lives until, you know, people had more manual labor roles. People didn't have the conveniences of vehicles and even public transportation. Like physical wellness was more baked into our day-to-day lives. And that's something that we evolved with, right? You know, our human bodies are basically the same as they were about 300,000 years ago. But culture and civilization has changed drastically, right? So we're living in these kind of, you know, Stone Age bodies, and we need to work with that now today. And so if you think of like physical wellness, like 50 years ago, there were no gyms either. Like nobody needed to actually carve out time to go move your body. That's like would have been such a mind-blowing thing to think now there's like a gym on every corner and like I need to get in physical exercise. I got to get in my 10,000 steps. Like the fact that you need to be intentional about working out is honestly
and then buy
crazy.
tech that measures your success.
Totally, which you know I love too.
Me too.
So like physical wellness, back in the day, physical wellness was not necessary because it was just we weren't in this
so
age
sedentary.
of indulgence, or convenience. So that's the first pillar. The second pillar I like to think of is like social wellness, right? So like you were talking about back in the day, you know, we would grow up with our relatives. We would have multiple generations in the home. We would hear their stories and their warnings, and we would feel the sense of connection over the dinner table and everything. And like social wellness, that has shifted a lot too as we've moved into this kind of industrialization of like city cultures and moving away from our families and putting old folks in old homes and then replacing real world interactions with interactions on screens. And so social wellness to people are so lacking in community today because they need to actually carve out like it's difficult to create true community in person and get that serotonin and the oxytocin of actually like hugging someone in real life. So that's the second pillar. And then you can think of the third pillar as like emotional wellness, where like a long time ago, you know, nobody would meditate. It was like just for kind of like Eastern yogi people. And like over the past 15 years or so, like meditation, even yoga, you could say, and also therapy has become way less taboo and has become much more commonplace because it's necessary. Like we need to actually be carving out time to process our emotions. And so, you know, you've got physical, you've got social, you've got emotional, and then there's nutritional wellness. 100 years ago, every apple was an organic apple. Like the industrialization and the conveniences of the groceries and kind of the big agriculture has created a lot of ease, and we get our food delivered and all this stuff. But in exchange, it's reducing the amount of nutrients in the food, and there's so many more pesticides and heavy metals and all this stuff. And so we actually need to spend a lot of time and effort reading the labels that we never needed to do. There's a lot of stuff that they put in it that just is not even, that's so bad for us, that's poison. And so we have to carve out time and energy now just for nutritional wellness that we didn't have to do. And so long story short, you know, getting to the fifth component, which is like kind of the newest one, you could say, is digital wellness. And digital wellness, we didn't need a long time ago, but now is this new thing that we have to carve out for our wellness, to carve out time off of screens so we don't live in that like overstimulated dopamine loop, and to feel that sense of loneliness and depression that we feel when we're off of it, like to actually have a sense of balance and use it intentionally without overusing it, letting it put too many behavioral hooks in us. That's really important too. So today it's like we now need to put a lot more effort and mindfulness and intention into all of these forms of wellness. And that's just part of the cost of the progress of civilization, honestly, I feel.
I can do a plug right now for the cost of convenience.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
Definitely.
Yes. Let all our listeners know about the amazing documentary you've been producing that Tommy's starting.
Yeah, Tommy started. And we're doing the world premiere in September in Washington, D.C. And, this is how I came across Tommy, looking at what is the cost of convenience, like looking at the digitization of humanity and like, what are some of the externalities that came out of that? I think we've had enough time to like take a seat. And now as we integrate with generative AI, like how can we be mindful and learn from like what's happened in the last couple of decades? And like, how can we all as part of a movement usher in more of a conscious relationship with these digital devices, right?
Make sure you support the documentary, and we'll be sure to drop the link when it's ready to be shared. Blake, I'd love to hear your journey through your detox.
Absolutely.
Just to bring this full circle.
Yes, starting off with my detox, I do call it dopamine detox, but first of all, I don't want to get a lot of people confused because we actually don't want to get rid of dopamine, because if you do, that's actually what causes Parkinson's disease. Dopamine is actually something good.
We want dopamine. We want delayed dopamine.
Yeah, delayed gratification is actually good, because there's a study, they put a mouse in a cage. The mouse could have left and had a sip of water, or it could have waited for a reward. And the scientists actually found that the mouse would wait for the reward and had more of a dopamine release waiting for the reward. Delayed gratification can be a very good thing. My detox actually started when I realized that it was taking control of my social life, my habits, and it got to the point that it even affected my relationships with even my family.
What did that look like for you?
That kind of looked like,
what did an everyday look like?
An everyday looked at like at the dinner table, just pulling out my phone. It looked like not being able to focus on my homework, procrastinating. It looked like having less social interactions. And it just got to the point where I kind of felt like I needed to change. And I obviously was an entrepreneur at this time. I had my own video production company called Blake Media.
So you started that when you were 15?
So I was working with influencers at the time.
An exponential entrepreneur.
But
exponential entrepreneur.
It kind of got to me. If I'm running this business online through social media, how am I going to navigate healthy habits? Yeah. So I talked to a lot of entrepreneurs about that.
Up. I was 15 years old.
So what I kind of found out is to start using it intentionally, not habitually. So if we can go with intention through these apps, then we can start to do things like having a successful business using Instagram or Facebook, using it with intention and understanding that every time I use this app, I'm going with an intention to do something for my business or to post something about my business, rather than just mindlessly scrolling away.
Or just, doing a dance, right? Which is part of like behavior. Like when I see 100,000 people do the same thing, I'm like, that is behavior modification, okay? Like monkey see, monkey do. Let's rise above that a little bit.
I really want to get though, because, both of you have referred to this as an addiction at one point in your life. And there's a real power to those words. Addiction is not an easy thing to beat. And I can guarantee if there's people listening to this episode that are struggling with that, as anyone does when they're struggling with addiction, there's a sense of, I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to change my life. And so I'd love you to share, Blake, maybe if you feel comfortable, a bit more of kind of the reality of what that was like for you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Feeling like no one else understands you. I definitely can see where you're coming from if you're listening to this. But something about me was when I started sharing my ideas, interestingly enough, a lot of people seemed to resonate with me and where I was coming from. There are other people, like everyone is going through an internet addiction, pretty much the youth generation. There are people who understand each other and are willing to improve. And for me, I kind of tried to surround myself with people who were aware of the issues that I was aware of and tried to...
Did you find many of them? You're right.
Not many, to be honest. It kind of started like I had to spread my message.
Yeah.
That's what really happened. I really just tried to spread my message, and once that happened, people resonated with me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so the reality of feeling like no one understood, that was when you were trying to make the change. But what about when you were in the addiction?
When I was in the addiction,
What were those feelings? Like what was the reality like
it
that was painful enough for you to want to actually create a message and bring that to the world? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Hopelessness. Yeah, just feeling like I even had really bad symptoms. I thought I had ADHD. I had to go get tested because of the ability that I wasn't able to focus. My grades were going downhill in 8th grade. Believe it or not, actually, my report card is it's mostly like D's and F's. It was just really bad. Yeah.
Believe it or
And
not,
coming
that's why I
from
started a business.
yeah, I'm being serious. And coming from a family of 2 parents who are medical doctors, they were disappointed in me. I feel hopeless. I'm not studying well. My attention span's going down.
What were
And
you
then
engaged in? Was it like games or was it like scrolling?
it was video games, especially Fortnite at the time was a
Fortnite,
huge one.
yeah.
Yeah, I was just sitting on the computer. Yeah. All day. Yeah. And that one, the creators of that have really utilized it
Have
to
nailed the manipulation.
right, exactly.
At least for my brother, I felt like there was a deep sense of depression because he felt helpless. It's just like he was so wired into it that he felt helpless. And then the self, like, it was just felt like the sense of hopelessness that you can't really control your attention.
Because here's the thing, like there could be people listening to this or, parents or older siblings of people that are listening to this who have younger siblings or whatever that I guess, don't even know that something else is possible. And that's what I really want to sort of drill home, because it's so socially normal to see this behavior. And in a way, it's, no different to the sugar addiction. Like it's totally normalized. We go out for dessert kind of thing, and that there's an addiction there. There's an addiction that's very harmful for us long term because it's so socially normalized as, a lot of these kind of intrinsically violent behaviors are to ourselves. It could be hard to understand how else life could be. And that's kind of why I'm digging a bit into your stories, because even when I heard you both speak at HealthSpan, I'd never considered that I could have a digital addiction. Like it was not something that I considered. Had I felt in my day-to-day, I'm probably working too much, I need to have a couple of days to decompress. Yeah, I had an awareness of that. But actually, like the edge of, can you make your bedroom a phone-free zone? Wow, that's actually a bit of an edge, And so that's kind of what I want to get to, because I don't want people to hear this conversation and kind of address it in the superficial layers, because I think it's a conversation that people are trying to have, but let's really get to the guts of what the actual issue is here, because what we're touching on is some pretty important and profound topics. The inability for someone to not work towards something over time. Like since that HealthSpan Summit, I've had many contemplations inspired by both of you. I've thought deeply about the fact that in Greek times, a philosopher would spend decades on a single thought, and now we can't hold a single thought for longer than a couple of seconds. What is that going to do to the kind of longevity of our ability to evolve as a species? That's a major kind of societal, cultural issue that I think we're up against in this conversation. And then in our own personal worlds, how much discomfort due to a lack of practice are we experiencing that we don't even know we're experiencing? The anxiety of actually sharing ourselves in a raw, vulnerable, in real life, visible, here I am with all my flaws without the filter kind of way. And what are the implications, because there are correlations. There's less people our age getting married. There's less families. Like I really think that this could be one of the core kind of roots to a lot of these really important problems that we're facing right now. And I think starting with the sharing of what it was really like, hopefully will be kind of the light, for a few people to be like, wow, I didn't recognize this was an addiction. And now I do. I feel empowered to actually know that there's a path out of it. Yeah. So the detox process for you, Blake, like when you started to kind of take your power back, was it hard? Like, was it hard to eliminate the games? Was it hard to...
Absolutely.
What did your parents do as well?
My parents, they were kind of just a little bit mad at me at the time when I was going through the addiction. it was kind of something that I had to take upon myself. And it wasn't easy. It wasn't a quick fix at all. I would say this actually took maybe like 1 to 2 years to completely solve.
Yeah, it's a commitment.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I was able to it affected me so much that I was just able to kind of pull my life back. The technology is just affecting me so much. I was able to just implement better habits, and the researching and learning was kind of the most important one, understanding like the research behind it, how technology affects mental health. And that kind of propelled me forward.
And you also took accountability, so I commend you on that.
Yeah, 100%. And what would be kind of your dream, Blake, for your gen in terms of the landscape of tech and its usership? Like what's the kind of utopia that we can work towards that your message is helping push? What does that look like in reality?
Yeah, definitely. So my dream for the youth generation, my generation, for the future would be that if we're all aware of how technology affects us, and if we can all navigate in the future better tech habits and the way that we use these devices in social situations, I would definitely think that if everyone was aware and we can come together understanding these issues, then people, if you're in a social situation, it doesn't always have to be that we're just sharing this video on social media. We can focus more on connection, like having like what Tommy said about oxytocin and giving people real hugs rather than feeling disconnected socially. I feel like that's kind of a dream I have for the future.
How do you see that? If you could just sort of give
Mhm.
like a litmus test of how that currently is.
You said on a scale of 1 to 10?
Yeah.
I would say we're at a 3, but we're making progress. Like we're definitely making progress. I'd like to be at a 6 in the next 2 years. That kind of means just understanding healthy tech habits. I mean, people like Tommy are really helping out. I'm sure, do you deal with people with the youth generation as well?
I work mostly with like people in my generation, but people ask about me working with kids all the time. So it's
like, are you
definitely-
on like what are the apps? Are you on Snapchat?
Yeah.
Like, what are you on?
So-
How do you? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So I
It's a
actually
secret phone number.
let me tell you the hacks. So what I do is notifications are off. So for the apps that don't really mean a lot to me, WhatsApp is on because immediate family, I would say, support it. Things like YouTube is off.
Yeah.
Yeah. But grayscale is a great one if you want to limit the amount of
I've been doing that recently.
of colorful saturated light. So grayscale can really help not have the urge to be pulling out your phone.
Wow.
Yeah. And
Just turn
then
it to black and white.
Do you
not as
have your
addictive.
location services on with your friends on Snapchat? I'm asking
No.
particularly because I find that
Oh.
one kind of creepy.
This one is so creepy. Like
I don't know which
Snap Map, everyone can see your location and
That's what it's called.
yeah,
Snap
Snap
I've
Map.
never heard of that before.
And this is kind of creating we were never meant to see all your friends
Mass surveillance on
partying with another group of friends at a party that you weren't invited to.
Fuck those guys.
Or
I mean, it's
This
horrifying. Can
social
you imagine? Like,
dynamic.
shoot, they didn't invite me to this thing. I'm sitting at home, and they know I'm sitting
Right.
at home.
They know I'm sitting at home, or
watching them.
this guy's traveling across the world. I'm kind of just here at home. Oh my gosh, like they're doing this. And then you have all these like social groups on Snap Map. This person's at the beach, this person's here. The
It's a
social
crazy world out
dynamic,
there.
it's dysfunctional. I always have my Snap Map off.
And the crazy thing
Yeah.
is, you probably don't even want to be at the party with those people, but just because you can see. them.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
Yeah, just because you can
Exactly.
see, that does have an effect on your mental health.
Totally.
Yeah.
How do you cultivate your digital footprint across, like, Meta, or I don't know if you're on Twitter, but just like, how are you?
Santa's is
do you-
looking for tips.
Yeah, I'm actually looking for tips. This is for me, right? Like, what are you doing to cultivate your digital presence? Like, because part of it is that on the back end, right? All the data that you're generating, just the loss of privacy, we have to be mindful of that. As generative AI grows, like, you do have that sort of a social score of like your digital footprint, sites you visited, conversations you've engaged in, things you've liked, things you've tweeted, things you've disliked, things you've complained about.
Mm.
Yeah. Do you have an intentional way? And like, really, at least for me, I haven't had a digital presence. So I'm like constantly wanting to, right now, at least, even this is going to be like, this is really pushing the limits for me. in terms of like just
You can have the paparazzi sign.
no,
That's
just
what you
becoming
Digiroxy.
datified. Yeah. I don't have a social media presence right now, but like I'm just curious, like how are you thinking? Are you thinking about cultivating it intentionally? And like if you are, and just collectively, even with you guys, like what are you doing to sort of if you're limiting your time on the platforms, and how are you cultivating your digital presence is what I'm asking.
Right. If we're talking about content, first building a presence online, it's just been proven that the people who have very edited and sound effects or animated videos that are highly stimulating always perform better than someone with like just a talking head video. It's just not interesting anymore with people's attention spans these days. And that's even another problem, because once you have that, then all the content creators are going to create highly edited videos. So now you kind of have this problem of we're just kind of getting a less and lesser attention span, because guess what? It's going to get more views. It's going to get more likes. So then all these content creators, the presence that they're creating online is just in order to receive the validation and the views and the likes, they have to create highly edited videos.
You also do video production, right?
I
You're
do take the blame. I take the blame for this.
And I capitalize on that.
Yeah, because it's kind of it's needed now in order to grow.
Yeah.
In today's world.
So we interviewed Peter Kell yesterday, and one of the questions to Peter, so he specializes in video-based advertising and specifically long-form videos. So like 40-minute, it was 40 minutes, videos that basically bring you into the whole entire documentary of the product that you're selling or whatever. And he was arguing, and it was actually the first time I'd have a counter argument to this, that actually, no, people's attention spans aren't dwindling. Yeah, I'm just curious your perspective on that.
Yeah, I mean, that's great to hear. Usually how I look at that, if he's creating these 40-minute documentaries, it's a different target audience, which that's great for the people who are looking at that product specifically. But the way I look at it is I feel like the majority of the target audience is going for these like short 15-second videos that are just quick. Like the amount of information, like it's even been said, like the average human nowadays is getting 77 gigabytes of information per day. We would used to read like one or two newspapers 100 years ago.
Wait.
Yeah. Now it's actually 77 or something like 240 newspapers a day.
Yeah.
That's going through our mind for the average person. So it's just crazy. But if
stimulation.
Right, if it's a crazy amount of
What
stimulation.
did you just throw in there? Is it stimulation?
It's a crazy amount of stimulation.
Oh, stimulation.
I thought you said stimulation.
Just damn stimulation. Simulation. I want to get out of it. Go live in the forest. That's not the answer.
But yeah, even something like the forest, there was always this pain and pleasure back then, where hunters had to go hunt and experience pain before they can feel pleasure. Like
there was even a delayed reward system.
Right. Yeah. Even if you have an injury, after you heal from that injury, it's scientifically researched that you will feel pleasure after you're healed because of the pain and pleasure. And nowadays it's like, well, you could just get the pleasure instantly and without having pain. So
but that's actually a really interesting point for us to zoom in on, right? Because it's part of the natural design that we can't actually experience these things separately to one another. So we must be experiencing pain. And I guess this is the cost of convenience, right? So this kind of immediate pleasure seeking that we're getting from the constant dopamine, like the pain, I guess, is what you guys are speaking to, right? These other feelings of helplessness, of depression, of aloneness. Like, is that not kind of that same pattern just playing out in this really kind of extreme way? And then the pain gets worse, and then we're seeking more of the pleasure to escape the pain because we can't be present with ourselves, and there's kind of an excuse to not have to be present.
You're absolutely right. It used to be a short pain pleasure, but now it's just gone mayhem. Like like you said.
But going back to what are some of the mindful tech habits that you're currently
utilizing?
Yeah,
absolutely. So like I said, grayscale, I'm meditating every night. That's really helping. Even a neuroscientist from Stanford, Andrew Huberman, I'm sure you guys know him. He even said 10 p.m. to 4 a.m.
I just love this guy. I just love this guy. Okay.
So yeah, Dr. Huberman has said that you have to... You gotta get rid of your blue light at night. Even dimming the lights, if there's blue light, you really gotta turn off all the lights. Because if you have a little bit of blue light, it's gonna just screw up your whole sleep pattern.
There's such a thing as blue light toxicity.
Yeah.
And there's actually intravenous treatment that my kinesiologist sent me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cool.
Where you put light into your veins to neutralize the blue light toxicity in your body. I was like, this is out of control.
Yeah.
That's cool because
crazy.
I have heard, when you imagine blue light, you would think you don't want it in your eyes. Like, oh, I don't want to see the white light of my kitchen.
Yeah.
But the truth is our skin cells
flame.
actually have receptors for the blue light as well. So they're like, you actually want to be wearing like full length pajamas at night too, especially if you're going outside into like street lights and stuff. And so it's our whole body
This is what he was
that
saying.
can be disrupted by it. So that's why actually intravenous blue light
Therapy.
blockers actually makes a lot of sense. That's so cool.
Neutralizes. And when you see it, literally the veins are like lit up.
No way.
Yeah, it's crazy. That's the extremity.
Yeah, that's extreme.
I just have cute blue light blocker glasses. That's it. That's all.
So red glasses.
That's it. Nothing intriguing.
Rep it. That's actually made a really big difference. Just a shout out for that particular biohack. Since wearing blue blockers, shout out to Brandon and Zach for giving them to me. My deep sleep has improved 100%. Like undeniable. And REM, but mostly my deep sleep. My ability to actually go into a deep recovery sleep every night. I was probably getting like 50 minutes, and now I'm getting 1.5 average.
I've had the same experience because I have the Aura Ring and it tells you how much deep sleep you're getting. And I can see literally linear 1-to-1 that when I am watching that extra episode at night, or when I'm not wearing my blue blocker glasses, or when I'm not being careful about my screen use, right before going to bed, if I am on my phone or screens, I get like not enough deep sleep. And when I am careful about that, I get enough. It's like the one metric that changes it.
Yeah, let's talk about this because I think that this is really like it's changed my life. Looking at my sleep, using my heart rate variability as a metric to see how my nervous system is, strengthening over time through implementing some of these habits is really amazing, especially for entrepreneurs to avoid burnout and to have a sustainable nervous system. I think is so essential for balanced decision making. And the more someone rises to responsibility and power, the more important the decisions they're making. When I was working in government, that was crazy. It was like 16 hours in Parliament House under artificial lights with caffeine and sugar and alcohol, no sleep, high stress. And these people are meant to make balanced decisions on behalf of a nation. It's out of control. This really matters. So the blue blocker glasses, what else?
Tell us.
I mean, I think of most of it I have specific habits that I employ that are, it's probably similar to what Blake's sharing here too, but I think the mindset behind it is more important, I think, like what's underneath it. And, thinking about healthy phone habits or digital habits or screen habits, all this stuff more as a practice than anything else, I feel like has been most helpful for me, to use like physical wellness as a comp here. You don't get fit by going to the gym once, and you have to continue exercising consistently before you see any difference in weight loss or muscle mass and all that stuff. And so it is the practice of doing it. If you brush your teeth for 30 minutes, you're not going to have better teeth than if you just practice brushing your teeth for a minute, every day. Like it's more about the doing it consistently than anything else. And so when it comes to digital wellness, it's the same thing. It's not like kind of the questions were like, okay, when did you fix this problem with your phone addiction? And like the truth is like, I'm still fixing it. Like I'm still working on it and I'm still practicing these things because it's not like I solved it and now it's done. It's that every single day I'm being bombarded by even smarter technology and screens. And as it continues to get smarter, I need to continue to practice these habits and get, more in tune as well. And so I think just thinking about this not as like, okay, I need to like solve this problem and then I'm done, but being like, okay, I always need to be eating well. I always need to be taking care of my body. That's something that I'm going to be doing my whole life. Thinking about that from the digital realm as well, I find really important.
Yeah, amen to that. I've found too, like awareness of working towards long-term goals. This actually came into my awareness when I was writing Legacy Disorder, my second book, compared to when I wrote Love Out Loud. and simply just my ability to be with the subject matter for extended periods of time, one book being before Instagram and the next one being, post Instagram. I'm sure that's not the only denominator, but also just like a society where stimulation is accelerating, and I think focusing on a book really allowed me to be like, okay, this is actually where my attention span's at. Because as a CEO of my company, your attention is actually split in 100 different directions every day.
Your attention is gold. No, it's serious. Like, I think if you look at as our attention, our consciousness is gold, and like just looking what we're pouring it into.
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. It's the currency we have to kind of, birth the fruits of our life. And that's such an important thing for people to understand, like where your focus goes, energy flows. And if you're not able to have agency over that, you're not actually choosing where your attention's going, how can you create a life that really is yours and is meaningful to you?
You can't, I think. That's the short answer. And I think that's why we are having this epidemic of mental health issues is that, people are, even if they don't consider themselves addicted fully, like using it first thing in the morning creates a whole new baseline. Just everybody can, I think, admit that they're dependent.
Tommy, you had this analogy with time. I think you referenced when we were interviewing you. You mentioned like if you were on your phone, I think it was like 8 or 10 hours a day in a span of a year.
Yeah.
I think you made an analogy. Can you refer back to that?
Yeah, for sure. The average adult American spends about 5 hours a day on their phone, and that's just on the phone. And so if you look at 5 hours a day over the course of a year, that's 2.5 months of your year.
And that's on the low end. 5 hours is on the low end. Right?
There's a few different people with a few different stats on that. 5 hours is what it was before the pandemic. So honestly, it's probably more now.
So then that's like
now.
2 months out of your year that you're just like.
Yeah, 2.5 months, 24/7 waking time is spent straight up on your phone.
Day,
yeah.
Basically. It's a quarter of your day. And then you spend half your day sleeping.
Like if you had a life review, right? And you
time audit.
And you did a time audit and did a life review. You're just like, how much of your time you're just like this, just staring at your hand.
Think about like the way that we rationalize this. Like if a friend's like, let's go to the beach, and you're kind of considering like, oh, it's going to take an hour to get there. Then we're only going to have like an hour on the beach, and then an hour back. It's like 3 hours. Nah, it's too much. But then meanwhile, we're just like 3 hours.
Yeah.
Scrolling on social media, like that's wild.
It's so true. Like if you spent 5 hours a day playing guitar, like how amazing would you be at it? If you spent 5 hours a day like doing karate, like I think the long-term goal setting is so important because it's much easier for us to
be aware of our awareness,
be intentional. Yeah. When we're like, okay, what is the cost of me being on my phone? It's me that opportunity cost of me not having the life I want, of me not making the money and being able to travel around the world or go to all these new restaurants.
How important is community in that? Because like I remember at your birthday party, people didn't have their phones. They weren't like, creating stories every moment, or like for you with your friends, like how important is it to set boundaries or be able to like attract that community where you could just kind of engage in this? That's the new normal for this community where, we're not sitting around on our phones at dinner.
Just actually have a good time with each other.
Yeah.
We have something in the BRIC community, and we do this at our retreats and at all of our BRIC events, which is kind of a rule that phone time is solo time and social time is phone-free time. And so I kind of think of phone use blowing your nose. Like there's nothing wrong with blowing your nose, just don't do it in front of other people, So it's like,
my bad.
Exactly. And so, if you're going to go like blow your nose, what are you going to do? You're going to respect everybody else at the dinner table and you're going to go to the bathroom or go into the other room. And I honestly believe that phone use is, that's a healthy practice as well, because for many reasons, but one of them being the whole idea of like social smoking, right? If you look at smoking,
which took time to change.
Yeah, it took a lot of time to change and took a lot of legislation of being like smokers are going to go over there. But, when you see somebody else smoking a cigarette, you're more likely to smoke a cigarette. And there's a lot of people that literally only smoke cigarettes when that happens. We have the same challenges when it comes to phone use as well. And when we walk down city streets and everybody is down on the subway and everything, like we're way more likely to be susceptible to that and do that too. At least in our community where we can have more control. When people come to my house, it's like, hey, we love our phones. We're going to use them to create better lives for us. But like, if we're here together, let's just be present.
Yeah, so one of my questions around all of this is kind of as AI takes a lot of the kind of, I guess, laboriousness off, especially work-wise, in being able to develop content for us, post content for us, manage kind of a lot of things digitally for us. Do the both of you see the advancement of AI in a positive light due to that?
I see it in a positive way, but I can see how it can go downhill due to AI taking jobs away. AI helps me with my business online, helps me write captions, it helps me write long emails, but AI can be, I feel like, abused and take out so many jobs. Like, even as a videographer, if AI starts to create CGI imagery, my job's gone. Or AI can start to even, we're going to see books written by non-existent people. Yeah.
Did you see the new robot CEO? It's got launched yesterday. Yeah.
Wow.
Really?
Wow.
Do you think, though, that when a lot of that kind of, labor gets taken away from us, there's just going to be more creativity that can emerge? Or do you kind of just see it as a fundamentally negative thing?
Like at Healthspan, Brian Johnson was even saying the mind is dead due to AI. I think creativity.
That's a very extreme statement.
It is.
It's a very
My mind's definitely alive. Alive and well. Yeah,
With AI,
good
though,
point.
of course, I agree with you. My mind is live too.
It's interesting to contemplate.
It is interesting to contemplate because I think creativity can be going a little bit downhill with AI because it does even start, it has even personality now. Like ChatGPT, it has attitude, personality. Yeah. So
Sure.
it really is something that I think if we're talking about creativity, it could affect it. It could affect it if we're not really aware and if we're not just like mindlessly using it.
I think also the new professions would arise as well, because I think we never saw, being a YouTube content creator or just being a content creator in general as a professional venture. But I think it's going to allow for, I think in terms of for you, if you are learning how to integrate with some of the best AI tools to create your content and just your prompt engineering and everything that you learned, that's your IP, that's what's going to help elevate you and still allow you to be creative.
Yeah.
I think that it's going to be incredibly disruptive. I think that a lot is going to change, and a lot is going to change in an incredibly short amount of time. And I think that it's going to be extremely unpredictable and that we have only scratched the surface. And so for me personally, I often try to not even go there, like in my mind, because I just feel like I don't even know, like it's just the rabbit holes go too deep. So it forces me to just kind of take a higher perspective, I think, on this. And, the truth is that, if you kind of look at literally every technology, starting with what arguably could have been the first human technology, which is harnessing fire, right? Like fire existed in the natural world, but the moment we could harvest it, that was when we could finally like cook meat, and that helped us grow our brains and evolve. But fire had a cost as well. Fire allowed people to, you could actually get burned. You could burn down other people's villages. And so there was it wasn't just all good and it wasn't just all bad. And I feel like you could use that example for literally everything else, from the hammer to the television and everything since. And so it's going to be the same with AI. I think it's going to ruin a lot of lives. I think it's going to create a lot of industries. I think it's going to boost creativity. I think it's going to, ruin a lot of creative practices. But ultimately, the highest perspective, I believe, is like, no matter what, even if it does take your job, even if it does cause depression, like every experience, like I believe that we are brought here on earth in this human form to learn and grow through our challenges. And so even if there is something bad about AI, we're either going to get a lesson from it, we're going to learn something about ourselves or each other, or we're going to get a blessing, a thing we want. We're going to get a cool new video that we share. And that's true for everything in life. We're always getting a lesson or a blessing. We're always growing. We're either getting what we want or we're learning more about how to get what we want. And so I think, I have to just only look at it from that perspective, because the details are just
That is a
so
beautiful
murky.
perspective, for sure.
Just touching on what you said, Tommy, I have to really say that AI, I feel like it's going to affect the school system greatly and the reading and writing capability of the younger generation, because our phones are tools. So if I need to do long division for work, I have my phone for that and I pull it out and there's a calculator. If I need to write an essay and this technology can do it, then why do I need to learn it? Of course, that's a big statement, but of course we need to know how to read and
Just
write.
in case Blake's teachers are listening.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, AI with the school system, I think that's really going to be detrimental, and the schools need to find out a way to cultivate a creativity and innovation rather than trying to solve problems that technology can just solve instantly. So that's what I wanted to touch on with what you were saying about AI.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
See how it goes.
But, you know, with that perspective, I agree. And I think, you know, it's important for us to be able to have distance from kind of the dramatic kind of storyline at times. Although on the other side of that, through all of these points of evolution, I'm almost certain that there would have been points of discussion, you know, where humans had to come together and be like, okay, how do we really want to use this technology?
Mm-hmm.
And it's a balance. It's being able to kind of direct our perspectives in a way that's hopefully constructive and for the betterment of humanity, whilst also not getting kind of enraptured and lost in the overwhelm that these kinds of conversations can create. And I don't know your perspective, Sanders. We've talked a lot about AI over the past few days. I definitely feel a sense of hopefulness.
Yeah, I do too. And this is what I love about In Truth, because the mission is to awaken the technology within, right? And I think a lot of what we're creating externally is just mirroring the inner technology. I think we're transcendental beings. I think that we're here to transcend and expand our consciousness. And, you know, when you have that perspective where you're just this animal that could be, you know, you're just this reductive being that could be manipulated, you know, just through your neurochemistry. I don't think it's as simple as that. And I think that, like you said, this is an opportunity for us to like look towards awakening that your own intelligence, your own AI that's going to lead you through all the synchronicities and the beautiful moments and weave, you know, your path for you. Because this is something that, you know, in the past few days became so obvious to us. It's like, what is this like organic algorithm that's bringing us all together and like creating this synchronicity? So there's something allowing me to just remember what it is that we're truly capable of in terms of being human. And like now having AI is just an opportunity to like really be multidimensional. We were talking about having digital avatars yesterday and being omnipresent. So like I can have a multidimensional presence digitally, and I could be so creative with how I utilize that.
Yeah, exactly right. I think a lot of it is the design of technology that makes it so distracting. This is something I think about a lot with In Truth and kind of the vision that we want to pioneer in how technology is designed and used. The fact that we have to pull out a phone, literally something that obstructs the moment, to be able to share something is by definition kind of, it's obstructive. It's not good design. But imagine, you know, would it be so kind of limiting or distracting if we didn't have to pick anything up? You know, if it was an intuitive part of our experience. And I mean, that's a whole other conversation. But my hope for technology and humanity is that we can kind of find this middle ground where technology becomes an extension of the organic kind of intuitive way we want to live, and not something that's obstructing us all the time or keeping us tied to a screen. And I think, like a lot of things in life, you know, through the eyes of a creative, the issue is sometimes bad design and not bad utility. You know, the utility is great, but it's not designed in a way that's kind of user-friendly or intuitive. Once we have what we're developing with In Truth, the ability to track emotional state, you know, I would love to be able to have, with consent, obviously, some kind of AR integration where, with permission, as my trusted kind of network of friends, you give me consent to be able to see your emotional aura so I can actually be more empathetic and compassionate. I think that would be an amazing tool. You know, we're contending with so many unconscious cues that you can learn, of course, over time, but it can take you, you know, 10 years to really learn someone's mannerisms and idiosyncrasies inside out. Because what, you know, looking away in one culture might mean I'm respecting you because eye contact's confronting, might be you're disrespecting me in another culture, you know? So there's all these kind of small things that can make it difficult for us to get past the ego barriers. And with our technology, I really hope that we're creating a pathway to be able to just get there, you know, and we can connect compassionately immediately And from that space, it becomes intuitive anyway. But just this technology's here, I think, to help us navigate the complexities of our world and our society. And a double-edged sword, in a lot of ways, it's created more complexities. But I think if we can flip that script, then we can have a seriously advanced civilization without the obstruction.
I know. And what I love about you, Blake, is like you're such a visionary and you're so meticulous and you're just a high level of discernment. I'm just so amazed by you. I'm such a fan, seriously.
Thank you.
And like, I'm like just looking to see how you begin to continuously like navigate this path, because like you're essentially creating a blueprint that could be followed, right, by your peers and like other people within that, the digital native community. I'm just so excited for your future and everything that you're doing, and I just really love your presence.
Really appreciate it. Yeah, I'm going to do my best to spread my message. And with you guys too, I really love what all of you guys are doing, especially with Love Out Loud and the movement that you're creating in the technology. And being a digital habits coach, this is all really going to impact society. And I'm going to take your message too and promote it with the youth generation.
Yeah, Blake.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And Tommy, before we wrap up, I'd love to give you a plug. Tell us about your retreats. Tell us about how people can engage if they've kind of identified and had some light bulb moments during the episode. How do they work with you?
Yeah, thank you. You can go on our website, gobricknow.com, and there's because turn your phone into a brick, gobricknow.com, and there's a free assessment that we've had about 3,000 different people take now, and that allows you to discover how much control you have over your phone, gives you a score, and then gives you some free resources on how to improve that number. That's something that, I would definitely invite anybody that's interested in this type of conversation to increase their awareness around their dependency or potentially their addiction, because that wake-up call, I think we discovered, is the first step, right? To just figure out where you're at. So that's something that is available. And then I'm also about to launch my new course that I've been developing for many years. That's the Phone Smart Method. So it's like a 30-day create healthy phone habits course, and I'll be teaching that in about a month. So I'm excited to finally be sharing that.
And that's a live course?
I'll be teaching it live over 4 weeks, and
we can put a link below so everyone can register as well.
Awesome.
That's amazing. It's such important work, Tommy. Thank you for pioneering this entire, industry, basically.
I think we all are. I think we're all here on the forefront having this conversation and talking about the things that everybody thinks about or kind of talks about at a dinner table. But I think we're all here devoting our lives or our careers to like solving this for others. And I really, truly believe this is the most important social issue, as you were describing.
And I'm grateful for like the existence of such communities, like if you are somebody right now that like, that really speaks to me. I'm a digital minimalist. Like I want to be part of the break wellness movement. Like that's amazing that you even put that together. And I think you were at 6,000 members currently. That's just beautiful.
Yeah, it's cool.
That's a big impact, and the 100 people that they probably have in their inner circles as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Lots of good ripple effects going on already.
100%.
But just the beginning, honestly. We really should be, the goal ultimately is to create a world where healthy phone habits are common practice, and we're pretty far. We're on 3 out of 10 of that.
But we're gonna get there, definitely.
Yeah.
Also, I want to say, Sanaz, where and when can we watch Cost of Convenience?
Yeah. Well, we have our world premiere coming up in real life, right? And so I think right now what we're planning to do is to go direct to consumer. So you'd be able to watch the film on our website and then purchase educational content that has to do with, digital wellness or responsible tech use and just a lot of modules for parents to be able to like help their teens navigate, right? Their tech addiction.
Can't wait.
Right.
Thank you so much, everybody. I love this conversation. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you for listening, my friend. If you enjoyed the show, please let us know by leaving a review or sharing the episode with someone you love and expanding this conversation as far and wide as possible. If you're looking for a community to have conversations with about global affairs, please jump in our Telegram group or join our free think tanks. Thanks for being a part of the shift towards a love-based civilization. We'll see you in the Telegram group or in the next episode.